Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Richard Donner's The Omen in 1976. So here we are. This is a kind of, it marks, a little thing I said I'll be doing around about Halloween time for around about a week. I don't know if it will be, like I said, every day, until Halloween, but something like that. I try and do it most days, where I review a horror film, each day, watch or rewatch a horror film, review it, and maybe on Halloween actually I might do a horror related list, so look for that, and that should be interesting because I probably won't be doing like my favourite horrors because it's kind of, it will spoil some future reviews, directors and stuff, without actually getting to them first, and I do care about that more than specifically horror films, some of these directors, so I won't be doing that, but I will be doing a horror related list, and yes. The Omen, marks the first, the kind of, a lot of horrors that I'll be reviewing. Directed by Richard Donner, 1976. So I've seen this film a lot of times as a kid. I was interested in this. It was very, very, I suppose, I was scared of this kind of thing happening. There's always something that scared me, devil-related stuff, and the supernatural in this way. And it was something, as a kid, that I was really disturbed by, and at the same time, I guess, intrigued by. And I watched it, and I really loved it. A lot of times I saw it. I watched the sequels, and the second one, I did like, somewhat, and I think it was mainly because, I was so invested in this one. When he's older and stuff, it was kind of, yeah. But I did find it compelling, actually. Some of the stuff that happened there. And it was interesting to see him actually talk more and stuff. And yeah, but the third one, I had to put off after 10 minutes. And despite Sam Neill, who's an actor I absolutely love, being in it, and as the main character, I had to turn it off. It was awful. But yes, The Omen, quite a acclaimed film. It's a very, very popular horror film. And yes, I think the 70s was great for horror. It really was. Some of my favourites coming out here, Texas Chainsaw, the original, The Exorcist, and yeah, just some great horror films here. And for me, this is one of them. I think, at times, some say it's not that good, but for me, it really is a great film, actually. Not a masterpiece. It's just one of the rare horror films, I do actually love. Not a lot of, I say that, but as compared to most genres, I think there's not a lot of horror films compared to other genres, say even westerns and stuff like that. If you look at what I've done recently, yeah, no, it's not as much as these genres, horror films that are on my list if you add it up. But I do love some horrors. There is some horrors on my favourite films list, and I think this is one of the great ones. It really is. I think it is very, very controversial. And I can understand depending on your views, that you won't like this film, and it may offend that's just to be expected. I think I'm not religious or anything, but yeah, of course, I can understand if people will be put off by this, and it was very, very controversial, and yeah, it's deals with a lot of stuff, a lot of risky stuff, in that sense, and of course the main plot is Damien, the kid. You see at the beginning, and Gregory Peck is basically the main character, who plays, plays Robert Thorne. Gregory Peck is an amazing actor, and I love him as an actor, and he plays the father, and his wife has just given birth to his stillborn, and something goes on, very, very shady business, but they swap the kid basically, and yeah, they give him another kid, and in return they don't tell the wife, and yes, basically, you see him growing up, and very, very nice scenes, quite wonderful scenes there. Him growing up, and then he, most of the film is when Damien is, 5 years old, and basically just explores, this family life, and of course, Damien is meant to be the Antichrist. He's meant to be the son of the devil, and the 666 and all this kind of stuff on his head, and that kind of very, very famous stuff. And basically, yeah, it's about that, and it deals very, very, well with this, the supernatural, and the kind of does it so well through the atmosphere, the kind of the cinematography, the sense of dread throughout this film, it's so effective, and I think I really got invested in this whole family. You know, the characters are really good. You know, I think you know, the wife, you know, of Robert is not great. I think the performance wasn't that good. You know, and she wasn't that good, but she was fine at times. And of course, you know, crucial to the film. And I think Damien in this film is very good, played by Harvey Stevens, and you know, Catherine, as I say, you know, she's not, the wife is not that good, but Damien is good. It's a good little performance from this actor, and it's just so, you know, it's very very human actually, what they do with this film, and you know, I don't have much flaws with it, you know, but there is some, but really, I think this is just a really really effective horror. You know, it does what horror films are meant to do mostly, and that is actually scare. You know, disturb. There's not really any jump scares in this film. There's a couple, but they're good jump scares, and mainly though it's kind of, you know, a horror film that is, you know, it deals with this sort of stuff. Through the atmosphere, the sense of dread, you know, and it's all to do with kind of the framing at times, the cinematography in general, the music, you know, very very haunting music used here, and you know, perfectly used really throughout the film, and just the way that the kind of, you know, story unfolds, and the kind of the little bits here and there, the foreshadowing, the characters and the way they kind of act, you know, against all this stuff, and you know, I loved, you know, the cameraman that kind of came into it, the photographer, the side character. It was really really amazing, and I loved the kind of the chemistry and the, you know, the kind of enjoyability of them two, him and you know, Robert, played by Gregory Peck, you know, together. I loved all that sort of stuff, and I thought it was a great character. And you know, the priest as well. You know, there's a lot of good side characters in this film, really good ones. And of course, you know, the nanny. Now, one of the nannies at the beginning gets killed very very early on, and then she gets a replacement, and of course, not all, you know, it seems, you know, it's not all it seems basically, with her. Very very, you know, kind of interesting character, and you know straight away that something isn't right with her. I'm not going to ruin what happens, but yeah, very very stunning stuff there, you know, how that's done. And I just think, you know, Gregory Peck in this is really good, pretty amazing actually. I think overall the performances are very good. There's not really a bad performance, I don't think, in this film. You know, and I think, you know, the bit where, you know, the nanny, you know, happened with the first one at the beginning could have been done better. I think the reactions was the main thing, you know, and a bit campy there, bit abrupt, you know, and yeah, but the rest of the deaths in the film are mostly really good, you know, iconic. You know, I think Hot Fuzz, you know, actually parodied one of these deaths. It's pretty obvious if you watch one, you know which one it was done. But yes, basically, it's iconic for a reason. You know, it's just so well executed. Maybe, you know, a bit. It's not, you know, exactly subtle, a lot of the kills, but they are really effective. And yeah, you know, there's not really any big flaws. Really, I think the wife, you know, Catherine, is not that great of a character. But really, the rest of them are really good. At least, I think the whole family life, you know, was so well portrayed. Actually, really got invested. You know, Gregory Peck was amazing in this film. I think he's a really relatable, you know, protagonist he plays, of Robert Thorne, and you know, it's just, you know, a lot of warmth, and you know, I loved how the first half was more about the family and kind of built it up. Slowly things started happening here and there, you know, and kind of the narrative really progresses wonderfully. You know, very very gradual, you know, flow to the film. The editing is great. The cinematography in this is really really great. You know, I think it's highly impressive. You know, I think that's one of the best things. You know, as well. You know, it's really really artistically shot. But it's always for a purpose. You know, to kind of evoke some sort of feeling. You know, and it's that sense of dread is perfectly achieved through the cinematography alone. You know, and combine that with the music and just the way that, you know, I think it's a really good script. You know, it has been criticised, but the script is really really great actually at times. Very thought provoking, and you know, just in general, you know, this film really gets into the psychology of all this, and what would, you know, how it would kind of affect people's lives, and you know, this kind of peaceful family, you know, and then there's this, you know, entity, you could say, that, you know, it certainly doesn't hold back, you know, in terms of it is, you know, dealing head on with the devil really, and you know, it can be very very controversial, you know, and I understand, of course, people probably, you know, not everyone's going to love this film, but I do love the film, and I think it's a great horror film. You know, I think it's a really human one. mostly great cinematography, editing, direction is great. Richard Donner, was a great director, and proven. He's done the Lethal Weapon franchise. He's which of course 3 and 4 are not good, but 1 and 2 really really are. And he's done Superman, one of the best superhero films of all time, and then of course he's done The Omen. Certainly on my favourite horror films of all time list, top 50 definitely. And I think it's a great one. It has some flaws. I think a couple of the deaths here and there aren't great. They could just been better. I think a bit basic there. The Catherine character wasn't good. Mostly, the performance wasn't that bad, but overall, not a great character. It was definitely elevated a bit by Gregory Peck. And I think as well, a couple of moments throughout the film, had me kind of questioning why they done that. A bit bizarre. Just kind of some of the stuff. I think just a bit, head scratching. A bit off, and maybe the cemetery scene, as well, could have been a bit more compelling. But really, that's my only flaws with the film. Really, I think it is a great film. I think it doesn't have too many flaws, as I say. I think it really it moves me in places. Really, really, I got invested in pretty much all the film. I think it's really, really well set up, and it kind of just gets better and better for the most part. And the second half is really amazing as well. Very, very disturbing film. It doesn't have, as I say, much jump scares in the film really, and it just, really kind of it hasn't got. Wow, that was loud. It hasn't got cheap, moments really. That you'd expect of quite a lot of horror films, of course. It's home to a lot of cheap, tropes. But this one really is just so well made. I think the kind of it's got a grittiness to it, of course. But that kind of adds to the experience. But it really is masterfully made at times, and overall great. And I think the performances are mostly really really good. Gregory Peck is amazing in this film. I really loved him, and I loved the cameraman as well. That helped him out in the film. I loved the different locations used. All the locations in London and all this kind of stuff. Very very well, effective there, and I just really connected with this narrative. It built the mystery perfectly, a lot of the time, and really got into the psychology of it all. Very, very disturbing. I think even the side characters, a lot of them are very, very good in the film. And I'd highly recommend this film. I think The Omen is a great film. I'd have to give it a 90%. I think it has some flaws, and it's not, not a masterpiece or anything, but really, I can still call it a great film, even though it was in one scene as well. In the second half, that wasn't that compelling, the graveyard bit. But really, this from start to finish, it's so impressive. Actually, I really loved it. I think I hadn't seen it for quite a few years, but there's a reason why I loved it as a kid. Because I really, I think it's a great horror film. One that is very, very risky stuff, and it's not for everyone, of course. I think, and it's very, very disturbing, but just really, really warm as well. A human film, and really has an amazing ending as well. One that, of course, leaves it open for the sequels to come, and they were, of course, nowhere near as good. I believe there's a fourth one as well, which I only found out about a year ago. I didn't even know there was one. And of course, I have seen the remake, which is crap. But yeah, the other ones, two is not as good as this, nowhere near. And 3, I hated, but yeah, this one really is a great horror film. I think it's definitely one of the best. Certainly among the best I've seen. I think it's great, and yeah, really like the characters. As I say, directing and everything, cinematography really top notch most of the time. Richard Donner once again. Really really amazing stuff here mostly, and there's a couple of underwhelming parts, but and a couple of moments that I just thought it's a bit bizarre and a bit stupid. They shouldn't have done that quite, but and of course Catherine wasn't a great character, but yeah, really I think it manages to be a great film, and I would really recommend this film. I think very very disturbing. Psychologically. It deals with the spiritual side, supernatural, in very very sincere ways. It doesn't. It's not exploitative or and handled poorly at all. Actually, it's just it's a classic. It really is. A one that really it's an amazing film. I think highly recommend it. And yeah, I watched it on Sky. I don't have the Blu-ray, but yes, The Omen. Thanks for watching my review.